What's up guys, Houndish here, and today Destiny 2 gets a pretty significant mid-season patch for Season of the Seraph. And this comes with a bunch of changes, some of which have been brought forward from Lightfall to address various elements of Destiny 2. And so there are general and quality of life upgrades, including blue engrams no longer dropping beyond the soft cap, updates to exotic sources, quests and more. And then we have a lot of weapon tuning changes, adjustments to exotic gear, airborne effectiveness and abilities. And so if you wanted a recap on what to look forward to with the update today, we'll break it down in the video. And so I hope you find this one useful guys. If you do, be sure to get subscribed for more Destiny content and let us know down below what you're looking forward to in the patch today. But otherwise, let's get into it. And so starting out with general changes for the mid-season 19 patch. Firstly, Bungie have said, for Rumble, that they'll be bringing it back to the Crucible screen as a permanent fixture. And so if you fancy some free-for-all action, Rumble will be permanently available and no longer just a rotating mode. Other general changes though include that blue engrams will no longer drop after we reach the soft cap for gear, so they'll simply be removed from the loot pool, and instead of those drops we'll get the equivalent amount of additional glimmer. And so that certainly is going to be pretty helpful for inventory management, but on top of that Bungie have said that they're adjusting all of the gunsmith reputation gains by plus 25 to compensate for removing gunsmith rep from dismantling blue gear. And so a couple of changes right there that the community are generally happy about. But on top of that, if you're still planning to collect any of the catalysts for Year 3 Season Pass exotics, including Eriana's Vow, Symmetry, Tommy's Matchbook, and Witherhoard, Bungie say they'll now benefit from the Season Pass boosts like other exotic catalysts do. And on top of that, any seasonal ritual playlist activity will count towards ritual progress for all Season Pass exotic catalyst quests. So it'll simply make getting those upgrades a bit easier. And on top of that, if you're still collecting any of the exotic glaives from Witch Queen, Bungie have said they're adjusting the quests needed to receive them to only require one portion of each weapon pattern from Wellspring weapons. They've also made sure that the first drop of each daily Wellspring weapon will have Deep Sight, and so once we unlock the recipe for the first exotic glaive, the other class recipes can be purchased by your other characters from the evidence board. And so a few changes there to accessing some of the bits of gear, and of course some catch up if you missed any of those items. On top of those though, in the patch today, we are seeing a lot of weapon tuning changes. So initially Bungie are adjusting range values for SMGs, and they say, we've made a large improvement to SMG performance at lower range values, but that is in combination with a small decrease to the higher range values. And so they've increased the damage and aim assist fall off start at 0 range by 30%, and then reduced damage and aim assist fall off start at 100 range by 6%. But on top of that, they say adaptive SMGs lag behind lightweights and effectiveness, and so they're adjusting damage, and they're increasing critical hit multipliers from 1.44 to 1.5, and crit damage is going from 16.2 to 16.9. We can also see that there's a small increase there to Forensic Nightmare's Zune from 13 to 14. On top of that though, there will be extra changes to pulse rifles, and this is specifically focused on the top end range of the weapons. So in general, they've reduced the aim assist fall off start at 100 range by 10%, and they've reduced damage fall off start at 100 range by 5%. And on top of that for pulse rifles, they're increasing recoil by 20% on mouse and keyboard only. And so I think we're certainly going to feel that change. And additionally, they talk about the potency of the BXR-55 Battler, and they're reducing the zoom on that weapon from 20 to 18. So give us your thoughts about the pulse rifle changes there, but next they say for sidearms, they're currently exceeding their intended effective range by a small amount, so they're reducing the Season 18 aim assist fall-off distance buff from 30% to 20%, essentially winding back that previous buff ever so slightly. Here though we get to some exotic tuning, and for Dead Messenger, Bungie say they believe it's too oppressive to play against in some situations. And so in terms of PvP, they're reducing the wave splash damage against players by 35%. And on top of that, they say for Dead Man's Tale, one of their previous updates had much more dramatic effects than intended, and the weapon was initially tuned around being preferred for body shots. But this meant that it had a larger aim assist cone to compensate, and once this was addressed, it spiked in effectiveness. But at the same time, a damage penalty for hitting maximum stacks of Cranial Spike never felt good, so they're pulling back various hipfire tuning to make hip firing at long ranges much harder, and they're removing the Cranial Spike penalty. So they've taken away the damage penalty for 5 stacks of Cranial Spike, and they're reducing hipfire and airborne aim assist cone angles by 25% on mouse and keyboard, reducing the hipfire cone angle bonus scaling from 20% to 5%, and also reducing the precision aim cone angle from 3 degrees to 0.8 degrees, and hipfire auto-aim fall off from 1.5 to 1.1, which is certainly going to make the weapon feel much less precise when hip firing from very long range. On top of that, Bungie points out that Revoker usage has increased more in PvP modes due to power level being removed, and the Reversal of Fortune perk is very strong, and ultimately, we've decided to cap the maximum return on this by requiring multiple misses to return one shot, and so that perk will now trigger on 2 misses within 6 seconds. Another couple of changes for weapons here though. They say they are removing slide penalties for weapons, given that they've adjusted the tuning on certain weapons like shotguns and matchmaking in the Crucible, so they're removing stability, incoming flinch, and shotgun pellet spread penalties when sliding. Hopefully that will be a broadly positive change there for combat. And then here there are the adjustments to airborne effectiveness, and they're essentially reducing the penalties of airborne effectiveness in a number of areas. So they've reduced the additional primary weapon auto-aim penalties by -60 when at 0 airborne effectiveness for both mouse and keyboard and controller. And on top of that, they've increased the precision angle, which is how far off a target you can be and still have auto-aim give you a headshot instead of a body shot. And that's changing by 50% at 100 aim assist. And so there'll generally be more benefit when at a high airborne effectiveness. And they've removed all additional primary weapon magnetism penalties, and at 60 to 100 airborne effectiveness, you get a magnetism bonus compared to a pre-AE controller only. But then they've reduced airborne accuracy penalties for all primary weapons per weapon type, so for hand cannons and sidearms it's 60%, auto rifles, scout rifles, pulse rifles and SMGs are by 20%, and for bows it is 30%. Then with special weapons, sniper rifles and slug shotguns see reduced base airborne accuracy penalty by 50%, and for pellet shotguns they have fully removed airborne accuracy penalties. And so definitely some changes there which will be noticeable in terms of airborne effectiveness. And before we get on to ability changes coming this week, right here there is one for exotic armor and the Sighton's Ramparts. And they say they've increased the cooldown of the barricade ability while Sighton Ramparts are equipped by 70%, and on top of that they've increased the amount of damage players deal to a Sighton's barricade by 25%, with the goal of the change being to decrease how often players see a Sighton's barricade in PvP matches, as well as adding more opportunities for effective counterplay. And so a good few adjustments to weapons and gear there, but there'll also be adjustments to abilities, so these are ones that Bungie have been playtesting in Lightfall, and they point out that in Crucible, class ability uptime is inflating significantly over the course of the last year, so they're increasing the base cooldown of Barricade, Thruster, and Dodge by 20%. And for Barricade, Towering Barricade's base cooldown has been increased from 40 seconds to 48 seconds, with Rally Barricade being from 32 to 38. Then with Thruster, base cooldown is increased from 30 seconds to 36 seconds. And finally Dodge, where Marksman Dodge base cooldown has increased from 29 to 34, and Gambler's Dodge is increased from 38 to 46. And so the majority of those aren't absolutely huge, but they'll definitely be noticeable. And on top of that, they say, at the start of Season 19, they reduced the linger time of Touch of Thunder's enhanced storm grenades, but this hasn't meaningfully moved the needle either way in terms of their potency and usage. And so they say they're taking a harder swing, and they've reduced the damage dealt by each lightning strike by 25%, but also they're making it significantly easier to avoid the roaming storm by decreasing its tracking speed and distance, especially near the start of its lifetime. And so Touch of Thunder and Storm Grenade sees the secondary strike damage reduced from 40 to 30%. They've also added a 0.24 second delay between the grenade's initial strike on impact and the creation of Roaming Storm. And on top of that, the Roaming Storm's travel speed now begins at 1.5 meters per second and ramps up over 1.3 seconds to a maximum of 3 meters per second, where it previously traveled at a flat 3.5 meters. And on top of that, the Roaming Storm's target search range now increases over 2 seconds after creation, as opposed to starting at full size. And so there we go, guys. Let us know what you think down below of the changes that Bungie are bringing to the game this week. Certainly a mixed bag, a couple of nerfs, but also a few buffs and fixes, so share your thoughts in the comment section. And if you found the video useful today ahead of the reset, then a like rating down below would really help us out on the channel. Plus, feel free to get subscribed if you want to see more Destiny content. But otherwise, I appreciate you tuning in, and I hope you guys have an awesome day.